Okay, guys, so welcome back to our last day of week 3. Remember to leave an empty space at the top of your notebook for the topic's name, and then at the right corner, the date. Today is September 9th, 2021. And before we start with anything that's practical, we need to define certain things that probably you know already, and probably one of them is new thing. So the first thing is, if you hear the word opposites, what comes to the top of your head when it says opposite?
Negative numbers.
Negative numbers, very good. What else?
Negative.
Negative.
Different.
Okay, so different, exactly. What else? I know when you say opposite, you think, well, the opposite, right? That's what some of you are thinking. Okay, so in math, just like some of you were saying, like Iker said at the beginning, there are numbers that are negative. We're going to say the definition, numbers that are the same distance from 0 on a number line, but in opposite directions. In other words, positives are opposites with negatives. Okay, so that's the definition that we're going to be using. Opposite numbers, they are the same distance from 0 on a number line, but in opposite directions. In other words, positives are opposite with negatives, okay? So I'm gonna draw right now a number line so you can see opposite numbers, okay? Or you can help me out with opposite numbers. So let's make the number line over here. Now remember, number lines always have an arrow at the beginning and at the end. Why? Because that means that they continue infinitely on both directions. So that's why we are not going to place, we're going to place arrowheads, okay? These are arrowheads, so that's why we're going to place arrowheads. We usually place 0 right in the middle. Okay, we usually place 0 right in the middle. Why do I say usually? You will see when we get to the topic of inequalities that we are not always going to have 0 right in the middle. We're going to work with a number line according to our needs, okay? So 0 is right there. Now it has to be, let's see if we have the background. Okay, I did it perfectly, right in the line. Okay, this is just for right now. You can use a ruler to make the distance appropriate. Okay, you need to have exactly the same distance from one number to the other in a number line. That's why you're going to use a ruler, okay? What do I mean with that? That if I'm placing 1 over here right on top of the line, this is 1, okay? I'm not placing 2 over here, and then I'm placing 3 over here. That would be incorrect because this distance between 1 and 2 is not the same between 2 and 3. You have to have exactly the same distance. That means that you're going to place 2 over here and 3 over here. And I'm going to move this a little bit down so it can actually match the lines, okay? So I'm placing it there. It matches now the line. So that's 1, 2, 3. It has to be exactly the same distance. Okay? And we said that opposites are the negatives. That's what Iker said. So that means that over here at the left side, we got the negatives. And we're going backwards, okay? We're going -1, and then further on, -2, and then -3, and so on, okay? So they are like separating themselves. But as you can see, there is exactly the same distance from -2 to -3 than there is from 2 to 3. only one little square, okay? Or 1 centimeter if you're using the ruler. Okay, so those are opposites. These are opposites of this. And 0 is a neutral number, okay? It is a neutral number. It is the only one, the only number that for right now, it doesn't have a sign. It's neither positive nor negative, okay? It's neutral. There will be a moment in your life, especially if you're going to study an engineering or you're going to study math, okay? Or physics or something like that, that zeros actually have a sign. 0 positive or 0 negative. It will get a time where you got 0 positive or 0 negative. Right now, 0 is just 0 without a sign, okay? I'm not gonna explain, I'm not gonna go into further explanation why it is positive or negative right now. Maybe later. Okay, now that is opposite. Now let's continue with our definitions, okay? Now let's go with the definition of integers. So what are the integers? So we have different families of numbers, or in other words, we have numbers that are included in another set of numbers, okay? So for example, we have the whole numbers. Whole numbers are numbers that are exact. They are not a fraction, they are not a decimal. They are exact numbers, they're whole, but they're only positive, and they go from 1 to infinite, okay? Whole numbers go from 1 to infinite. That's one set of numbers, one group of numbers, one family of numbers. Then after that, we got the natural numbers. Natural numbers are from 0 and all the positives. So you see, whole numbers do not include 0. Natural numbers include 0. That's the only difference between whole numbers and natural. And then those both two are inside or included in the same family, which is called the integers. And integers include whole numbers and their opposites, okay? Integers include whole numbers, 0, and the opposites, okay? So we're gonna place that. Integers are the whole numbers. So integers are the whole numbers and their opposite. It also includes 0, okay? Questions about that? No, that was easy, right? I'm not gonna do nothing there, no example in there. And now I'm going to define absolute value. What do you think absolute value means? What comes to the top of your head when I say absolute value? They're not wrong answers, okay? So what do you think it is an absolute value? Any idea of what an absolute value is? Okay, so in words, or like in order for us to understand what an absolute value is, we are going to say that it is a number's distance from 0 on the number line. Okay, so that's it. You will identify, or we identify it. We identify them because it is enclosed in those two lines, okay? They're not parentheses, they're straight lines that are going to be placed in both sides of our number, okay? So, for example, if I say absolute value, okay, that's supposed to be a straight line. absolute value of 3. And that's how you say it. Absolute value of 3. Okay? And that's how you represent it. Okay? This is the absolute value of 3. You can also have the absolute value of a negative number. Okay? So for example, we can have absolute value of negative 3. Okay, so absolute value of negative 3. And that's how you read it, okay? That's how you read this. Absolute value of 3. Absolute value of negative 3. Now I'm going to explain you how you find the absolute values. And I'm going to explain it with the number line that we had already. Okay, so let's place it over here. Remember, we are not using a grid paper notebook. I'm just using the background so I can draw perfectly the number line. You're using your normal regular notebook and using a ruler, okay? And every centimeter will be a separation between one number and the other. Okay, so let's say that I'm having right now, I'm gonna add some numbers, okay? I'm gonna add -4 and -5. And also on the other side, I'm adding +4 and +5. Okay, now I'm going to find the absolute value of -5. Okay, so I'm going to write absolute value of -5. According to the definition, the absolute value is the distance from 0 to the number that I'm actually working with, okay, in the number line. So I need to count the distance from -5 all the way, and I'm going to place the little line like this in blue, okay, all the way from 0. And I'm going to count the distance, how many spaces I have. So let's count. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have 5 units. So the absolute value of -5 is?
-5.
No. How many spaces did I move? Did I move -5 spaces? 5, right? So I moved 5 spaces. What does that tell you? It tells you that the absolute value of a number is positive because distances are positive. For example, I'm not going to say that Nino's height, and I'm just making this randomly, that Nino's height is 1.6 meters negative because I'm not counting downwards. Measurements, even if they're downward, they are positive, okay? You will not see a ruler that has -1 centimeter, -2 centimeters, -3 inches, right? All of the rulers are positive numbers. So the same thing goes here. Distances are positive. Therefore, absolute values are
Positive.
positive. Now let's make this the yellow one. Let's do the absolute value of +5. So we're gonna go count it again. We say 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So the absolute value of 5, I'm gonna place it in green because it cannot show, is also 5. Okay, so you see, opposites was correct because it says there are numbers that have the same distance. So 5 is the opposite of -5. -5 is the opposite of 5. Both have a distance of 5 between them and 0. Okay? Yeah, we get it? Okay, so since they have exactly the same distance, they're opposite. So in other words, we can say for right now, and pay attention to this, for right now, okay? For right now, absolute values are always positive. And this is for right now, okay? I'm gonna place it in pink. For now, absolute values are always positive. And this is important, the for right now part, okay? Why am I keep saying for right now? Because there is a moment where you are going to have a property of absolute values. And in that case, the answer might be a negative number, okay? When you get to the properties of absolute value, which probably it's going to be in 10th or 11th grade. 7th and 8th grade, we're going to keep absolute values as always positive. Okay, we clear with that? Okay, so absolute values help us also find distances, okay? It helps us find distance. How can we find distance? By using the number line, okay? And using absolute value. So if I ask the distance between -5 and 5, how much is that? Well, you know that from -5 to 0, it is +5. And from 0 to 5, it is also 5. So what's the distance between -5 and 5?
5.
From -5 to 0 is 5. And from 0 to 5, it's 5.
10.
10, exactly. The distance between -5 and 5 is 10, okay? So yes, that's how absolute values is going to help us find distances as well. Questions so far? Okay, so before we do some exercises, because we still have time, what's the topic's name?
Absolute value.
Absolute values. Absolute value. And that's what you're going to place at the very top in your notebook, okay? Absolute value. Now I'm going to place over here some exercises so you can find the absolute value of them, okay? And this is like a quick quiz, no, not a quick quiz, a quick exercise, okay? That you need to solve in your notebook. And that's how we're going to call it. We're going to call it quick exercises. Quick exercises. Instructions. And the absolute value of each number. Okay, number 1, absolute value of -5. Absolute value of 2. I'm gonna place like more space in here. Number 3. Absolute value of 9 times 2. Okay, there's an operation in there. Number 4. Absolute value of -10 plus 3. And the tricky one, negative absolute value of 7. And one more, negative absolute value of -7. And those are the 6 exercises that you need to solve right now. And those are the quick exercises, okay? So it's easy peasy. You just need to pay attention on what we did over here. Pay attention to this little note. We're gonna call it note. We didn't place there, note. Okay. For now, absolute values are always positive. And you take into consideration every single definition that we just did. And with that, our class of today is finished.